So during the unit number 2, what are the topics that we're gonna talk or that we're gonna touch in there? Okay, we're gonna review scientific inquiry. This is not new for you because 90% of the class was in my physical science class, so you are familiar with all the terms and you are familiar with the scientific method. You know how to apply that, but I want to review that. Okay, so just to start, you know that scientific inquiry is the systematic study of nature. Is how scientists are going to study nature by observing what is happening around them. See, they are going to record observation. It could be quantitative observation in which you're going to use number, or qualitative observation in which you use word or pictures. So let's say that you are a scientist, you are observing that even though there's a lot of water, there's a lot of sunlight, there's a lot of nutrients in the soil, your plants, they're not growing. You're going to record that. You can use pictures of your plant, or you can measure the height of the plant. Since the process is not adding up, is not working properly, you're going to create equation. What is happening here? That even though I have all of this, my plants, they are not growing. So based on the observation that you made of your surroundings, you're going to create equation. Based on that equation, you're going to write about a hypothesis. A hypothesis that has to be testable. See, hypothesis that you have to be able to create an experiment just to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Now, in order to write a hypothesis, you need two things. You need the independent and the dependent variable. Independent, the one that you're going to manipulate on purpose. Okay? So that's why it's also called the manipulated one or the experimental one, because that's the one that you have control over it as the experimenter. Okay, the dependent variable is gonna change throughout the experiment as a response to this one, and is the outcome, the result that you're recording. That's why it's also called the observable, the outcome. Once that you have your hypothesis, remember that you're going to use the format if behavior of the independent variable, then behavior of the dependent variable, because, and then you're going to make an inference, and that inference is going to be based on what you know about the topic. But once that you have all of that you have your questions that you want to study, that you have the hypothesis that you want to test, that you have identified the independent and the dependent variable, you have to design your experiment. And in order to design your experiment, you need the control group, if you have any, and then you need the constant. You remember that the constant, oh my goodness, look at this, that the constants are the factors that are affecting the process, but you're keeping them constant throughout, you're keeping them the same throughout the experiment, because you want to study only one factor at a time. Because you want a control experiment. A control experiment is when you have only one factor change at a time, and that factor that is changed at a time is the independent variable. Okay? So once that you have the control group and the constant, then you're going to be able to design your experiment. Okay? When you complete your experiment, remember that you're going to be recording your results. That's your data. You perform the experiment, you record the results, you record your data. You're going to use tables to record your data. It could be qualitative or quantitative. You're going to use tables to organize your data. But then you're going to translate the information that you have in your table into graph. Why into graph? Because when you are creating graph out of your table, the graph, they're showing you the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable better. See, when you have that in tables, you're going to see that. But when you have them, all these numbers or all this data placed in a graph, you're going to be able to draw conclusions better, because you're going to be able to establish the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. Now, once that you have all your outcome, or once that you have all the results in your tables, organizing your tables, you're ready to create graphs. Okay, to create a graph. Remember that you're going to create a graph because the graph, they're going to help you to establish the connection or the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. We have three types of graph. Okay, pie graph, if they are used when you want to represent percent. Okay, let's say that you're representing part of a whole, then you're going to be using a pie graph, pie or circle graph. Okay, then we have bar graph, that we are going to use bar graph when we are comparing categories. Remember that when you were performing that experiment with the paper towel, you were using a bar graph just to analyze which paper was the best. And then we have line graph. When do we use line graph? When we want to establish the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. Those are the ones that we're going to use in chemistry. The line graph. Okay? So, over here you have an example of a graph. See? The tendency is not a line, it's a curve. Okay? But the tendency is just to go up. Remember that always you're going to graph the independent variable in the x-axis, and on the y-axis you're going to graph the dependent one. When you have a graph like this one, it's going up. Doesn't matter if you have a line or if you have a curve in there. That's a positive relationship. What does that mean? That as the independent variable is increasing, the dependent variable is increasing as well. Okay, they are both going in the same direction, positive relationship. Over here is the opposite. So if it's going down, we call that an inverse relationship. Why an inverse relationship? Because as the independent variable is increasing, what is going to happen to the dependent one is going down. You remember that you can have a curve or you can have a line. See, this is better when you have a line in addition to a positive relationship. You have a direct relationship in there. You know that the slope of the line is going to give you the variation, the change, the rate of change, okay, in that relationship. Okay, so you're done with the experiment. You were observing the nature. You realized that something wasn't working the way that was supposed to work. You then write a question. Based on that question, you were able to create your hypothesis. Once that you have your hypothesis, you already know what are the dependence and independence variables for. You find the control group for your experiment. Okay, now we're going to continue with theories, laws, and hypotheses. You know that a hypothesis is an educated guess. So you have to be familiar with the topic in order to write a hypothesis. Oh my goodness. Continue with the hypothesis. Okay, so one more time, a hypothesis is an educated guess, so you have to be familiar with the topic in order to write a valid hypothesis. A valid hypothesis, because remember that a valid hypothesis is a hypothesis that you can test, a hypothesis that you're going to be able to design an experiment to accept or to reject. Now, when you're writing your hypothesis, and we have talked about this, do you have to be right? No, that's why you're experimenting. Hypotheses, they can be accepted or rejected, okay? Accepted or rejected. No, it doesn't want to work. Okay, now, what happened when, like a lot of scientists, they have tested the same hypothesis, and the hypothesis has been accepted many times. Okay, when that is the situation that you are studying, or the scientific community is studying the topic all over again, see, replicating the same experiment and the same result is obtained, okay, then you have a theory. You have a theory there, and the theory, remember, they change over time, especially now that we have a lot of technology. Every time that a new discovery is made, okay, theories change. Why? Because when we have new information, we will have to see, we redefine theories because we thought in the past that process, the specific process that we were studying was working in a certain way, and when we have a new discovery, we realize that we were wrong. When that is the case, so hypotheses that are tested for a long period of time and still they have the same outcome, they become theories. And theories, they can change over time with new discoveries. Okay, theories, are they going to be true all the time? No. If they are exposed to that, they're exposed to just to change over time. Now we have the gravity. A gravitational law is a thing because everything that you put up is going down. But then we have a theory about gravity because in the past we thought that gravity was pulling us toward the center of the earth, and now we know that it's a pushing, it's from the top because of the development of the relativity theory. We now know that gravity is pulling down to the center, not pushing. It's not pulling you, it's pushing you towards the center of the earth. See, theory of relativity, they continue studying that and they arrive to that conclusion. Now the law. The laws are a statement that are always true. They don't change. They do not change over time. Yeah, I was talking about gravity. It's not the same, the theory of relativity than the gravitational law. If you put a ball to the air 1,000 times, 1,000 times that ball is going down to earth because of gravity. That's the difference between hypothesis that you are testing, replicating that procedure just to see the outcome, okay? Theories that when you have a hypothesis that over time is giving you the same outcome becomes a theory, and that the theory change over time, and a law doesn't change with time because it's true every time that you are, every time that you are observing that behavior, okay? And we have also laws, not only science but in economy, okay? When a product has a lot of demands, what's going to happen to the price? It's going to increase. That's always happen like that. If that's an economic law, always happen, like always takes place like that. The demand increase, the price is going to increase. And in science, we have the same thing. We have the gravitational law. We have the law of conservation of mass. It doesn't matter if you have a physical or a chemical change, okay? Beginning of the change, and at the end, you're gonna have the same amount of mass. Then we have the law of conservation of energy. When you are working in a closed system, it doesn't matter the energy that you start with, at the end, you're gonna have the same amount of energy in that same system. Now that the energy is gonna be converted into different type of energy, that's another story. Okay? So far, we have covered independent, dependent variable, we have covered observation, we have covered graph, and now we have over here theory, laws, and hypothesis. All of that is related. Okay, all of that is related. With that information, all this information that you have in this video, you're gonna be able to complete, okay, lesson 1, 2, and 4. Okay, later in the week, during the next week, we are gonna cover working with numbers written in scientific notation, and we are gonna work with significant figures, which is super easy. Okay,